Welcome to Altar of the Demo Gods. If you're wondering what advice from two experienced sales engineers sounds like, it's a little like this.
Welcome back to Altar of the Demo Gods. I'm Keith Wilson, joined by my co-host, John Morton. John, how you doing tonight?
Ahoy, hoy, Keith.
Ahoy, hoy, Mr. Morton. Good to hear you.
Returned.
Good to hear the call of Morton again. Before we get too far in discussing, what we've been up to and all that, I'd like to introduce tonight's guest. Back on the show again is Charles Herring. Charles, welcome back. Charles is the Chief Technology Officer for WitFoo, and he's going to be with us tonight. He's going to record a couple episodes with us. So, Charles, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back, Keith. I brought that change of clothes so that it doesn't look so strange.
So it doesn't look as suspicious.
Got hair and makeup people just off camera, ready to go.
Well, do their families know?
No. It's TaskRabbit. I don't tell them what they're here for. They thought they were putting together an IKEA bed. Turns out they have to do my hair and makeup. So anyway, they jump on some TikTok, YouTube tutorials. It'll be fun.
All right. So before we get kicked off, we're recording this now just after a long weekend, July 4th holiday. John, did you do anything special with your wife and your dogs?
Other than grilling, my neighbor's house was on fire. So
really, your fault?
No, actually, it wasn't my fault. It was about 8 a.m. July 5th, and sitting out on my porch enjoying a cup of coffee with my wife, and I see fire trucks, ambulance, everything. So I always tell my wife I live on a particular street, but the street next to us has the coolest name ever. It's called Snafflebit Court. And I'm like, God, I wish we lived on Snafflebit Court. Well, the house on Snafflebit Court is on fire. And I'm like looking at it and I'm like, holy crap. So we see a recap, they do a reconstruction after the event. Turns out the fire department officially blamed fireworks for catching the fence on fire, which caught the garage on fire. So quite an event.
So somebody was probably still a little hungover, or drunk, or whatever from the night before.
What better way to celebrate the birth of our country than burning down or blowing up a small piece of it?
At 8 a.m. though, what's the point of fireworks that early?
I don't know.
There should be some treason and rebellion every 4th of July. Or
Charles, do you do anything?
I don't think so. I have a really short buffer now to where I pretty much remember what happened at last 90 minutes, and the rest of it apparently just has a short TTL and it leaves. But I don't think I did anything. No warrants were issued.
Did you at least take some time off work?
I don't know. I might have. Actually, I know what I did. I got a root canal. That's what I did. I got a root canal. It was fantastic. Enjoyed the antibiotics. So yeah, that was.
Nice fires and root canals.
Well, in my defense, though, and John, I think you can probably sympathize. When a young man in the Navy, when I would stand and watch, all the families, you would let them take the lead and go and do the things, and you would stand and watch. It was like, I don't have any kids. What am I going to do?
Exactly.
So I got to do this habit probably 25 years ago, to where I just pretended every holiday was Labor Day. So like Christmas, it's just Labor Day. Because it would make me feel better about being at work. And it's just Labor Day. So I've never snapped out of that habit. Now it's been a few decades. I'll probably look at holidays, bringing them back into my life. But pretty much I just celebrate every day as Labor Day.
That's amazing, Charles, because, I used to do that. You're right. As a young, dumb sailor, guys have families, Christmas, Thanksgiving. Normally not 4th of July. We'd probably shoot stuff. But yeah, I would take their watch. They could go home. Yeah, and I'm just hanging out on the boat, playing on my computer, playing video games or whatever anyways, watching movies. Yeah. You never shook it, though.
I never did. I don't think I've put up Christmas ornaments, or I haven't taken them down, one of the two. But I haven't done what I'm supposed to do at many years in observing the observables. I do take time on, Memorial Day and Veterans Day, and I'll go do some reverent things there.
We're going to have to bring a guest on, man. I used to have a senior chief who made me, my only holiday I celebrated was Super Bowl, and he actually put me on delinquent study. so I couldn't even watch the Super Bowl in Cape Canaveral, Florida. I'm going to bring him on this show and we're going to lambast him. But
I had one kid when I was stationed in Japan that was a practicing Satanist, and he celebrated Halloween and his birthday. And it drove the skipper of the base crazy because he was this very devout Christian, and he was just, it was like, that's my religious holiday. It was such a thing that the Satanist can't have his birthday off as a holiday.
I'm going to the chaplain with that one.
Well, I don't think I did anything. Root canal.
Well, hopefully tonight's episode's a little bit more fun than that. We're going to be talking about white papers, use cases, sales collateral, landing pages, and your role in that as a sales engineer. I know for me, and I kind of picked this up when I was working with Charles, we didn't necessarily rely on marketing to create the message and the materials for our patch. We did that for ourselves. You know, the company put out their message, but we had to cater it to our customers. So we created a lot of our own sales collateral. And I think SEs should play a role in that, because if you're relying on your AE, especially if they're not very technical, to put out sales collateral, you're going to have a lot of apologizing to do later.
Yeah, I think there's also a whole lot of saving work. I mean, being any sales role is just exhausting. You're always on the road. You're always doing the expense reports. There's no time to recovery for paying over. All those things are very important part of the process. But if you can answer a question once succinctly and be able to share that the next time the question's answered, you're not having to go back and build it all over again. So I sort of had this goal for myself as the time I was at SE was, I want to answer every question with a high quality hyperlink. If I have to build the hyperlink, I'll build the content, but I want it there. And say, I've got a great thing for you to read that does act. Is that exactly the way you want it answered? And that's great for usability, and it also helps you understand what the needs of the customer is. We all start with, here's your product or your service, you're selling it, here's the price or ballpark of the price. And it's going to fit one or more needs. And unless you're selling something ridiculously simple, like an olive pitter, that's, you already know what the need is because it can't do anything else. There's going to be different use cases of the needs. So understanding the need allows you to build a bridge from what we know about our product, what it costs, what the value is, all that, to the need. Sure. And so when you can be very specific and the person's like, yeah, this is what I need. Right? This isn't in the voice about what the product does. This isn't in the voice of how the product addresses my need.
Yeah.
Specifically.
I got a question for you, Charles. As a buyer, right? At this stage in your career, as a buyer, my fear is always that, though. My fear is always, I do want to generate white papers. I want to generate a 1-minute video. I want to give you a price sheet. But what happens when you see it and I miss the mark? At least when we're in sales and we can chat and I can talk to you and I could be like, Charles, is this right? And you're like, absolutely not. I could try to deviate. But when I feel like when I give you a white paper or a price list or something like that, if I'm wrong, you're just going to move on.
Yeah, it's a tool. I mean, I think ultimately you have to look at it as something you have in your bag, right? And you might come out where you say, I wish I would have had this white paper ready for this conversation. Right, I've been reading about it, but I haven't made it yet, so I can't say, let's follow up with the white paper. Yeah. I think this sort of shooting them out there is, it's going to be ineffective, right? When we talk about how we tell a story, and I think most of sales is telling a story, you can tell it from the first person, like, let me tell you more about me and my product, everything I do, and like, great, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for that show. You can tell it in third person, and then let me tell you about this testimonial, right? And there's problems with that because, like, are you telling everybody's business to everybody, or how do you get away with this? So there's the trust component of that. Yeah. So we get stuck in the worst possible voice is second person. Like you're going through composition. No one, your professor doesn't say write a paper in second person. And almost all the sales will get stuck in second person. You need to buy this, and if you do this, this will be better. And so we're telling someone what character they are in the story. And the best place to get is first person from their perspective, to where you're not the main character, you're the supporting character in that story. And so in that way, what you want to use the white papers for is an enablement for them to tell a story. Oh, sorry, it's kicked my mic. For them to tell a story on how we get from their need to our solution, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to us trying to drive the solution to whatever needs available.
So for those that are listening that don't understand what a white paper is, let's talk about that for a second. White paper is generally some sort of educational write-up that follows along with the problem that your product tries to solve, right? So you're addressing the educational, theoretical, possible side of the problem. When I first started at the company that Charles and I first started working at, Landcope, I got the job because I created a white paper around what they did, right? They did anomaly detection. So I wrote just about anomaly detection in general, how anomaly detection is applied, different types of anomaly detection. It was never product specific, but obviously you can make them product specific, right? So white papers are generally short. I think maybe at most 10 pages. I don't know that anything there. I mean, there's lots of things that people label as a white paper, but to me, a pure white paper is usually around 10 pages. Charles, you're nodding. You have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's funny how it changes, because one, just to one up you, to get the job that you got later, I wrote a product review in InfoWorld magazine about the product that we ended up selling. So I'm just saying, I win. But 100 years ago, back when there was things called magazines, that's when you just like print out your 3D print a blog.
Dude, the late 1900s is how I would classify that now.
Back when me and my buddy Gutenberg figured out how to do that. But it's interesting how I think the role of the white paper is actually changing, and it is in the last 18 months, and that it's basically feeding artificial intelligence. So if you ask, what is a Landcope or what is a WitFoo, or, these things, they're being answered by artificial intelligence, which are gobbling up these white papers.
White papers.
And humans aren't reading like they used to. It's not like, well, let me sit down and read this 10-page piece of paper. It's like, I've got enough attention for a 10-second TikTok. So, the most altar of the demo gods is TikTok feeds. It's going to be the blooper reel. That's what the people will get out of it. And so we got to sort of inject something in there that's going to be useful.
I mean, the most attention we get are on the clip videos that we post, right? When we do post the short little clips to LinkedIn, we post those same things to YouTube Shorts too. Those get more attention than anything else because people don't have an attention span like they used to. You're right.
Well, there's just too much content being generated, and I think I shared this last time I was on, but that my dad had the newspaper in the morning, some crazy story from his buddy Pee Wee at work, and then whatever Walter Cronkite or Dan Rather said on the news. That was his whole ingestion of data for the whole day, right? Yeah. Then there's been more of the screen across my screen and all that since the time I started that sentence. So but white papers are important, and I think they're also important for establishing credibility.
Yes, for sure.
I'm not just making this up. Like, here's if you want me to go deeper, here's the paper you can read. So even if you just skim it, it's at least a validation that we have thought through this problem. We're not just taking this as an opportunity to try to trick you into buying our product for this thing. This is actually something we do. Here's how we do it.
You just gave me a great idea, though, Charles. I mean, you are what people perceive you as. So if we just figured out a way to flood the market with content where AI starts saying we are the cool guys, all of a sudden we're getting invited to cool parties.
Social engineer the models.
I mean, but that's how culture and society works anyway. If you repeat something enough, as we've seen lots of times, in the political season in America, it becomes fact, right? If we tell people enough that we're the best sales podcast in the world, people are going to start agreeing and saying, yeah, they're the best sales podcast.
That's the exact counter argument of what I just said, by the way, Charles. When my concern was that is the counter argument to that. A white paper is positioning us as the best, and no one can refute it. You're going to either take it at face value or dismiss it. But if there's enough, even an inkling, we are the best podcast in the world.
It's evidence. And there are times when evidence matters, and there's times when perception destroys it all, right? I think there's all kinds of situations when humans are making decisions that are formed by that. But I think white papers are just beefy explanations of here's how we solve that problem, and and then they may just knowing it exists. I think, unfortunately, is probably of higher value than the content of the white paper. Just having it,
sure,
sort of like carrying around a gun. It's just someone seeing it on you. That's better than using it.
To that exact effect, Keith, I think you're right, man. 10 pages might be long. I would prefer 5 to 7. But what I do when I read a white paper personally is I skim through it for the highlights. Again, I'm looking for that distilled info. I have faith that you wrote enough in the white paper to give it credence, but I'm looking for some metrics, some valuable feedback to something.
A lot of white papers have some good graphics too to communicate that information.
Yeah,
very
graphs,
quick, right?
Yeah.
If you have a good graphic guy on your team that can put those graphics together for you to really help communicate the words, because like you said, nobody's going to pay attention. So,
and to Charles' point,
if I'm skimming white papers, I'm looking for graphs and charts.
As a second person too, if you see some large brand Fortune 5 company logo in there, you're probably just going to naturally gravitate towards that as well, right?
There's
even though you don't like it.
Wow. Now, so another piece of collateral that I honestly think is one of the most valuable things. I think it has the biggest effect on customers. It's the use case studies, right? Because it allows me as a customer to understand, how do other customers that have my problem solve it with your product?
Yeah. I think even beyond that, at a more basic human level, we love first-person stories. Mm-hmm. Human beings love stories much more than we like facts.
Well, I've talked about this before. They're ingrained in us for evolution. Because at one point, I used to have to come back to Tribe and go and tell, Charles Berry's there.
Yeah.
Charles Bear there.
Don't tell people we're up bearing. We got to stop. Can't let any of those things. Those are deep holes. But but I think talking about voice, right? There's different voices, and we have these in sales, and we have them when we're talking about feelings and relationships. It's the most intimate way of expressing an idea is for me to say it in first person. If I talk about my pain, if I said, I really hurt when my brother died, right? We can connect on that, and there's an authenticity and there's a realness in that. If I say, you hurt when someone you love dies, you're like, okay, thanks for that. Master of the obvious, right? Or you just get completely cerebral into a third person and say, people hurt when people they love die. You're like, wait, who you, buddy? What story is this? And so there's
what Beatles song are you writing?
Right, like who cares? Let it be. You're Mother Mary come to me. What are you talking about? And so now just ruin the rights on your whole podcast. You're broke now. But McCartney's coming after you. But
that was so off key. No algorithms
still catch it. The AI doesn't even know who we are.
Yeah, just block it for. I just don't want that face associated with the Beatles. But yeah, the idea of a use case, it's validation. One, right? It's like I'm not the first person to do this. Like you think about who was the first person that ate an egg. Like you don't want to be that guy. You want, like, if the guy comes back and says this thing's actually pretty good. Like, okay, you sure? Because the salt fall out of a chicken. But you have a testimonial, that's connected to I was hungry, ate egg, didn't die, not hungry. So learning it. But there you go. So
try out this egg thing.
Yeah. So, but they are great. I mean, I think the most powerful things to get, in today's like risk averse situation, you have to really work to build those into the sales situation. And sometimes use cases to work around that, right? Because even if the customer really wants to give it, they can't get clearance to give it, right? Especially at larger companies. And they can be done, but you have to think about it. You can't casually build a use case on a document, especially a public-facing one.
I've only seen one other negative side too, where like if you're a smaller company, like a startup, right? You're just growing and maybe you only have like 2 use cases and you send it from an automotive manufacturer to a cookie company. And they're like, this has absolutely nothing to do with me. So you got to do your research and at least understand before you send the use case, is it aligned? But yeah,
or
that's the only negative.
Person. Yeah, or do they hate that person? Like, yeah, thanks for picking that out. That's the guy that used to beat you up in high school. Thanks for that use case, buddy.
Right? I'm surprised by that, Charles. Yeah. A lot of folks, and just to detract a little and bring it back to the cloud world I live in now, I didn't realize how many enemies Amazon Web Services, AWS, actually has. Okay. So some of the grocery companies don't like AWS because their parent's Amazon, and they also sell, like food and stuff. Yeah. I did not realize the insult.
Yeah. There's all kinds, and especially I think it's just the state of where we're at now, where everybody has strong feelings about everything, and not to dismiss anybody's feelings, but I mean, who's got time for all that? Be a sociopath. They should be my bumper sticker. Be a happy sociopath. Don't care that much. But people care about everything and everybody, and so like if he likes it, I'm not doing it. Like that. If he found merit in it, there's no way you can find merit in it. That's how much you hate this guy. Then if he eats healthy food, you're just going to eat crap. That's the whole thing, and it's hopefully not quite that bad. But there is a human reaction. Very real human reaction to whoever space you put up there. Like, I don't like it. He has blue eyes. He must be a Nazi. Like, well, how'd you make that jump? Right? And so you never know what's going on in someone's mind in a use case. But it is
downside, but you're right. It can be. You're right. When it's aligned, you've done the research, they will potentially get value from it. To Keith's point and to Charles' point, don't just be throwing them out there. This is going to work for you. You don't know.
Yeah, and you have to read we have politics, we have different, we have people that like Star Trek and people like Star Wars. We have some weird people that love them both. And so you have to know who the audience is on the voice or the tone of the brand you're bringing. And every brand has baggage. So
not going to lie, man. I jumped on a call the other day. I was about 3 minutes late. And when I jumped in, I heard somebody saying out loud, there's about 8 people in the meeting. Did you see what Joe Biden did yesterday? And I was like, wait a minute. This is probably the worst case scenario of a meeting I could potentially be in. And I jumped in last minute, so I tried to derail that. But to your point, everybody has their own agenda, their own influence. So use cases, I think I'm just always careful because you just got to know
who they are, how you use them.
Yeah.
But the other thing I'll say is, while, someone could hate a paper or a web page as a use case because of something connected to the person delivering the message, it's a lot harder to hate a human that's right in front of you for virtually any reasonable person. So, Keith and I did a lot of user group meetings where we bring in our established customers that are, and some of them would give their use case, present here's how we're using it to other customers, and have prospects in that. And they're giving a testimonial, right? Here's my use case that I use it for, and they're doing it in a less of a marketing scenario, and more of a field.
And it gives other people the opportunity to ask questions about that use case too, right? Yeah. Because if I just hand you a PDF of a use case that's very static, right? You may have a hard time looking in that and go, how does this apply to me? Like, it's close, but it doesn't. I've got these idiosyncrasies. If the person that helped create that PDF was there to answer those questions that you have, that might, that's even better. That it enhances it even a bit more. I didn't even think about talking about user groups as as collateral. But yeah, having like the use cases discussed at user groups was fantastic.
And if you're meeting with a prospect or a partner or anything like that, and you have geographically close a happy customer, bring them to lunch. They don't have to give a full, overview pitch, but you have someone there that can vouch for the use case, assuming they're not going to be oil and water. That's a sort of take a thermometer to that.
That's the greatest thing that I've ever had to my disposal is like when you have a customer that's happy. One, you get to go out and expense a good lunch, happy hour dinner. But two, they're selling on your behalf without even selling. They're just talking to somebody about how they like whatever you sell and how they found value in it. And it's amazing. It's like golden ticket.
It's validation from that first person, perspective. You can't beat it. It cuts to a whole lot. And then you just sort of sit there and hope not too much of the hair comes out of, because every time you do a deployment, something happens. Let's talk about the things I'd rather you not shine a light on in this conversation if possible. But yeah, it is. But use cases are good. You have to have them. Otherwise, people feel like, am I the first person doing this?
Right. Yeah. A lot of people don't want to be pioneers. They really don't. When it comes to like stability in IT, people don't want to be pioneers with new stuff. They don't want to be the first. It's one of the problems for a lot of startups is, trying to convince people to be the first to use their product.
And I will say, you can, if you're one thing to do on getting good use cases, if you look at a customer, I think this is the face of my use case for selling to retail, or whatever you're thinking. If you realize there's value in the way they communicate or the quality of their brand or whatever the strategic thing is, or their unique use case, bring that in as part of the sales conversation, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's, I'll deliver some training or whatever the thing is, whatever you can work in, whatever is available on the negotiating table, say, if we can have a referenceable use case when this is over, that would be just as big to us as the revenue and the relationship. It's a huge thing. But again, like I said, it's really hard to do that after. You can't really sign the prenup on the honeymoon. So you have to talk about it early on.
Well, you can. They just call it a post-nup at that point.
That makes sense. That etymology tracks.
Probably harder to get, though.
So I want to talk about one other piece of collateral too that I used to use. Since I've changed roles, obviously I don't do this. I do a ton of writing, but it's different now. I used to do blog posts all the time. I had my own website, my own blog, and I got that idea from Charles because he had his own website with his own blog that talked about the product. We blog on our own personal blogs about the product. We're never really talking about customers, always never representing yourself as the official stance of the product or anything like that, but just being very educational and formal, informational about what you're selling and the market around it. Right. I would also write blog posts for the companies that I work for. And marketing loves you for doing that because they're always looking for content. And it also helped establish, trust and things like that. But it was just another piece of collateral that I could point back to, right? If a white paper wasn't quite right, if a use case didn't quite fit, maybe a blog post was the right thing.
They are great. Any way you can encapsulate something where someone asks a question and you can deliver something they can walk away with, right? We don't really hand out white pagers anymore. That's not environmentally friendly, and who wants to carry that stuff around everywhere you go? But giving a hyperlink where they can read it later is great, and also where they can make the case. I mean, unless you're doing like a complete top-down sell, where the CEO sitting next to you on the plane is like, well, whatever you're selling, I'm buying it, buddy. Just call this guy. Unless that kind of crazy thing is going on, you're trying to get everybody on board. Sometimes from the bottom up, sometimes from the middle, And so there's going to be different needs that need to be addressed. One guy's going to go crazy if you can't authenticate with SAML 2. So you got to show up how you do SAML 2 authentication. One guy's going to be crazy if it doesn't run in Azure. And, so there's all of these in one opportunity potentially objections that have to be satisfied, and you don't want to have a meeting per objection. It'd be nice to have.
Each of those can be a blog post.
I wrote a blog post. I recorded a demo. I have, I'll send it right over to you, buddy. I knew you were going to be here, and having it ready, and just having it pre-ready. By the way, all of these things means it's proof you're not conning them, right? we already have this done. We're not making this up as we go to win your business, right?
To be fair, again, the only negatives I like to say is, like, if anybody's ever gotten an email from me or a text, you would swear that I am probably a special needs person who's not behind that keyboard. So I am the worst at grammar, spelling. So there has to be some balance. That's where I bring in the marketing aspect, where they review my blogs and they're like, what were you trying to say here? Do you know how to spell the word apartheid? And I'm like, no.
Oh yeah, I always disclaim, like, these are rough drafts only. You were responsible from here. Here you go. Like, I always put that
for that reason.
Yeah. If it's going on the corporate website, I make sure that I am nowhere near the final copy of that.
Right. If you ever see mine, they're not written by me. They were edited by someone else. But if you see my text, you're like, oh yeah, John's a human. There's no AI that's this terrible. That is a human being on that side. But yeah, the only caution with blogs.
But it is, it can be any format. I think it's, as long as it's reproducible, and you can also iterate on it, right? You can either go back and edit it, especially in the form of something like a white paper, issue a new revision, or a blog. There's no rule that says you can't edit your copy and fix it later, right? You're not publishing in the Wall Street Journal, right? It doesn't have that type of
right.
Once it's done,
it can change, right? And you can go back and say, that was wrong. Make your predictions in December, then revise in February. So it's the you're always right. This is perfect. Like, this guy is always make it right. But having those things together, I think what drives me crazy as a buyer is people just sending them to me. It's almost
just like assuming they know what your problem is, sending it.
Hey, this 10-page paper. Well, I'm like, who asked for that? I don't have. We just read random white papers.
We just received and released this newest report on XYZ widget that we sell. Here, read it now. It's like, why? There's no compelling reason. Like, tell me how this tell me how this paper applies to me. Right.
Yeah. Right. I think that the conversations, it's changed, right? The whole selling thing sort of changed, where buyers would have these windows where it's like, let's see what's going on, give us the updates. And that still happens to a degree, but to a lesser degree. And now it's more, we have a need, or we've heard that there's an ability to improve our production, our cost, whatever, right? Some business metric or some outcome. There's some new technology, AI. I've heard AI is a thing. How do we do AI? And so they'll go and research that thing, but they're driving that situation. They're not responding to these inputs. I mean, I'm at a point now where I get emails from people that are in my contact list. Everything else goes to dead null. I never see those emails. I can't process it anymore. I would not know what to do. Yeah, my phone's the same way. Don't call me from a payphone because you've got to get a bot. But people, my point is, the white paper in that process is important, because if I'm going out and I'm looking for something to hit my olives, right, or whatever the thing is, and I'm doing the research, and your white paper or your blog entry or your video isn't there, you're not in this conversation that I'm having with all these visitors.
Exactly.
You're just not. You don't make
That's
it.
the key.
That's
why even
ask.
Yeah.
One more tidbit here. I know we're almost at the end here, Keith, but we like to even replicate that data to Reddit. So rather than like a white paper PDF format that maybe can be read by AI, we will cut and paste that exact thing into a Reddit channel, just so we're in the conversation, like you're saying, Charles. It's like we got to adapt to the technology and where people are going as educating themselves as buyers. Spot on.
Yeah, we do have to realize that there is this layer of technology that's making decisions. This the gatekeeper between me, the buyer, and the vendor solution provider.
Yep.
That is making determinations on the ranking in my search results, right? You might also want to see this. It's making those decisions. and it's all out of band, right? It's not linear. You put content up there, it figures out what it means. I give it a query, it brings me back information. And, I we'll bring up one of the older things we used to do in that same thing was have custom landing pages. If you're looking for this very specific thing, here are all of the words you want to see.
Yeah, the first thing
about this thing, and they're still important. They're not as important as they were, a handful of years ago, but they are important for people to say, yep, this is what I want. I'm looking for an olive pitter. I'm not looking for, something to pit a cherry. Why would I pit a cherry? How could that even be the same thing? So, I don't know if they're compatible. So if anyone goes and tries to pit a cherry with olive, yes, you're on your own.
The AI is listening.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll have to say, I think all of those pieces are important for the way people buy now. I think they're also important in establishing confidence that your solution is mature enough to meet the need that white paper is built to defend, right? That I already have the white paper. We've already thought about this. It's not like we're going to hack together something that's going to work for your use case. And I think those things are still very important in the modern sense, but it is increasingly teaching the AI what it needs to know about you so that the AI can pass that on to the buyer.
I never thought about it that way. We're creating this collateral now, not just for the buyer, but also for AI. So this is the part of the show now where it's bittersweet because we've come to an end. Hopefully we've loaded you up with knowledge. But we're going to talk about some of our points. We're going to summarize, some of the points that we picked up on throughout the episode. I'll go first. So Charles and John, you have time to collect your thoughts. So I'll go ahead and go first. John, you knew this was coming, so you'll go next, and then we'll let Charles go last. So for me, we talked about being careful with use cases and with the white papers that you're sending, right? You want to be targeted in what you're sending to who. You don't want to offend anybody as part of it, but more importantly, you want to make sure that you're tying their problem to the collateral that you're sending them. And Charles, I think one of the things that you brought up too, you said something around asking, you're giving the best answer to a question that you're being asked by a customer when you're creating this collateral. So if that collateral, if that answer is long enough for a white paper, write a white paper. If it's short enough for a blog, write a blog. Tell you what, if it's long enough to write a white paper, write a white paper and split it up into multiple blog posts. Recycle the crap out of your stuff. Because it helps, people like to take in that information in all mediums. And also, I like the point you brought up, Charles, about negotiating a referenceable use case as part of, as part of the deal, pre-closure, not post-closure, right? So you want to negotiate that as you guys are agreeing on terms for whatever it is you're selling. John, what were your takeaways?
Yeah, I think like the collateral here is, verifiable evidence, whether in a use case or a white paper. My absolute favorite is when you have a human being who will testify. I testify to what you're saying, right? What you're selling, what you're doing in their own words, though. It's not like they're reading a script. I bought this product because X, Y, they're telling a story about how they use it. Will take you farther than you could ever imagine.
Yeah. Charles.
Yeah, I think where all of the collateral comes in is helping the customer build a story that you're a part of, right? That you're a supporting actor. And so these pieces of collateral turn into props that help shape that story for them. How do I? Because normally we're going to have folks that want to do business with us, and they're just trying to figure out how do they make that happen? How is that not a horrible idea for the business? And so they're going to have some needs, and they're going to look at the needs as much as we can use collateral as an enabling tool for them, right? Not so much a bullet for us, but an enabling tool for them to build the story from where they are to where they want to be. And we get to be a part of that. I think that's ultimately where collateral works best. And the other part is many of these things are modular. So, write the stories, write the pieces so they can be used as broadly as specific, and just retool it a little bit and then make it for the others. We can make it for the other team. This is why WitFoo is the best tool for the Chicago Bears. And screw the Chicago Bears. This is why WitFoo is the best tool for the Green Bay Packers, right? So not to be duplicitous, but I mean, the whole thing is you can repurpose the collateral, but yet all in the end, if the collateral is useful to the buyer and making their decision, you've established value in their story in solving their problem. I think if collateral does that, and it also enables you to do more for for your company, for your customers, for your partners, I think collateral can relieve work off of you. It did wonders for me. I even stood up a whole tutorial. Before Landco had training, I built my own training site. It was horrible. It was free.
I remember that site.
And bad masters as well. But I built that, and they could go on there. And the only reason I built it was so the customer could go when they had a question that I had maybe 10 questions that came up just all the time, and sometimes from the exact same person. And so I would just say, hey, this page, buddy, I can't do this 30-minute conversation again. And so that relieves some work for me. So, but those pieces I think are huge. Enablement and the story of the customer finding success, establishing your own reliability as an engineer. Here's some evidence that I might just making all this up, and then relieving some work off of you that can be resolved by those things.
Yeah, all really, really great points. Charles, thanks. You've been a great guest. If you, the listener out there, think you would be a good guest on the show, or if you have any questions for us, you can email us at demogodspod@gmail.com. That's demogodspod@gmail.com. You can check out, we're on all the podcast platforms, so anywhere you listen to your podcast, check us out. Plus YouTube, we're on there as well. If you want to get anything that's Alter the Demo Gods, go to our website, demogodspod.com. We got links to all the places that we're on, along with some blog posts and links to videos and all that good stuff. Next week, in our next episode, we're going to be talking about value frameworks, creating and using an ROI calculator. I'm super excited for this one. Charles is going to be on this show, and we're going to be talking about how WitFoo uses this not only for pre-sales motions, but for post-sales motions built into their product. I think it's really interesting. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So come back, check us out next week here on Alter of the Demo Gods.